So in our first class, we shared a little bit in terms of this notion of refuge. Kim offered a teaching that about, how we sometimes take a refuge in the, she used the word godly refuges and the, relationship, the wealth, and many things that we find ourselves pursuing in our lives, and made a contrast of something that may be more reliable. That is a kind of an inner kind of a refuge. And we had an opportunity for four of us sharing a little bit about our own way seeking, how we found our ways and continue to allow this sense of refuge to unfold. And so you had a little time to share amongst yourselves as well. And so we'll start this morning by inviting any reflections and questions in this last day or so, and soaking in this notion of refuge, shelter, safety, protection, or a sense of coming home. Yeah. So what arises for you? I may need to count on one of you to call out because my little screen is a little hard to see everybody at the same time.
Yeah, so feel free to raise a Zoom hand or raise a physical hand. We'll, all of us, Ying included, will do our best to spot hands. But yeah, any questions or thoughts, reflections on the specific prompt that Kim offered was this idea of sort of taking that story about how you came into this practice, how you found the practice, and sort of kind of framing it as a seeking and finding refuge. Any juice in that for anybody? Anything that came up?
Maria, I think, had a hand up. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi. Well, first of all, my story's funny because I've actually been looking. I was always looking. And how I found the person that really has been my teacher, which is Ajahn Sucitto, was I went on the Dharma Seed, and it's a good thing he was under the A's because I just went down the list until I found somebody that resonated in my heart. And that's been great. And then Gil came along later. So
Yeah.
I'm also thinking a lot about refuge, that for me, at least, it seems like it's really a matter of building it block by block. It's not just there, it's a cultivation for me.
Yeah.
And it's been hard. Trust is a big issue for me. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I was also reflecting how in this modern day life, that our way seeking seems to have changed quite a lot, comparing to a few thousand years ago. It could just be a button that we push somehow, something clicked, and then we're able to trace that thread for us and then kind of open up. I also resonate what you're saying in terms of the ongoing unfolding, expanding, and aliveness of this sense of a refuge. I think that's how each of us are navigating this, and it is a cultivation. It is a cultivation that a sense of refuge may continue to evolve for each of us in some way. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, Voss, your hand was up.
Hi, good morning. After listening to Mariah, I felt envy rising. In the little town that I'm in, we have a peer-run group, you might call it, but it's not really not something like what some of you have in California. And that's where the envy was rising, that you have that available to you. For me, the refuge has really become sutta study. It's what I seem to, with the lack of having a sangha that I can go to on a regular basis, and grow the Dhamma. It's the suttas that are drawing me in, and so Kim's sutta study class is one of my one of my kind of anchors, and I keep looking for these kinds of opportunities. So that's my little story of what a refuge is currently, and hopefully there will be others with time.
Thank you, Vas. I think the four of us would all resonate with that to some degree. Yeah, so absolutely. And the ancient words and how it touches ourselves, and also learning it together, studying and practicing with it together. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to pass it on to David and Kim next.
So thank you, Ying, and everyone for the reflections. Very sweet. I was reflecting that Ajahns have an advantage like AAA plumbing or A1 locksmith used to have in the yellow pages. They come up first in a list. Teachers and Zen is last. Anyway, so Kim and I are going to talk a little bit about what we refer to sometimes as outer and inner refuge, taking refuge in the triple gem or the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, sort of in an external sense, which I'll talk about, and then an internal sense. Serendipitously, today I find myself, I realize with my video, I'm in an Airbnb.
Unified Ideograph. Young Chen, she, her, is the co-host now.
I'm having an issue with my computer that reads stuff out. We'll just deal with it. But I find myself in an Airbnb in which above my head, there's three little dots, which very handily can serve for the three external refuges, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And the external sense of this, in a way, it's easy to grasp, but quite profound. In a sense, we seek shelter. I love that term that somebody threw in, Ying perhaps, in the physical, historical Buddha, the person, a human like us, a regular person, who found a way to freedom, found a way to free himself from suffering. And just the knowledge that this person lived and that they found a way to become awake in the world and that they shared it with others is a wonderful reflection and a place where we can find refuge. I think Kim will talk about sort of the implications of that or what those implications might be in our practice. But just the recognition that this was another actual person and that just like him, we can do it ourselves. Remarkable thing about the Buddha is that he did it as the one of the chants we chant to venerate the Buddha is that he is self-awakened, that he did it himself. He didn't do it entirely without teachers or without company, but a remarkable thing about his history is this idea that he did it himself, but so too can we, is the implication. We were personal on Tuesday a little bit with our stories, and so I'll just say for me personally, and I think it's true for others, maybe my teaching colleagues here, that we also, taking refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the meditation. That was the way he found to channel or to come to understand how suffering arises and passes. And when we meditate, we actually connect with that experience of another living human being some time ago, 2,500 years ago, but nonetheless, a person like us doing this same practice. Taking refuge in the external Dhamma, well, pointing to this gem above my head, just because it's there. I don't know what it is actually. Maybe it's a knob for hanging things. The Dharma or the Dhamma as an external refuge refers to the path of practice that the Buddha shared, his own path of practice, sort of converted over the 40 years of his teaching career into theory and practice, sort of path and method, if you will. So a theory about how suffering works, how it arises, how it passes. And the Buddha says, we have the Buddha, we have on some good authority the Buddha's words that he only was concerned with teaching one thing, suffering and its end. And so that is, and there's a lot of ways that that was taught, a lot of theory, if you will, and then practice, a way of meeting our experience, particularly maybe in the meditation practice, a way of coming to know for ourselves in our direct experience sufferings arising and ending. And again, just to be personal for me, this external refuge, when I tripped over the Buddha Dharma, the teachings, the Dharma associated with this historical figure, sort of two refuges emerged. One was this idea that what happens in meditation, that what could be known in meditation or what becomes available in meditation is very, very profound. And then second, sort of a way to put that understanding of suffering into good use in the world. And so for me, that was an aspect of that refuge in the external refuge in the Dharma. Finally, we take refuge in the external refuge in the Sangha, and the Sangha actually has several meanings. We tend to, when we hear it these days in this scene, we tend to mean the community of practice. I like that phrase, community of practice, because I think it captures a lot of what we do here, what we do, Vas, for example, in Sangha, Sutta study, is gathering together to support one another's practice. It means a couple other things traditionally. It means the monastic Sangha, people who are ordained, monks and nuns. And in a sense, we take shelter, find safety in that ongoing way of living the practice because they have kept alive for a couple thousand years, the teachings, by chanting them, by studying them. And what we do, in a sense, reflects and echoes. We also, by studying, keep them alive. And then in a broader sense, and an important one, the Sangha, taking refuge in the Sangha can mean taking refuge in people like us who practiced and who have come to have some sense of what it's like to be more awake in the world, touched in a little bit to the possibility of the potential of the practice. And that's sort of yet a larger group that includes people ordained, monastic practitioners, and also lay people, householders like most of us here, perhaps all of us here. So there's a brief sketch of what it would mean to find external refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Kim.
Thank you, David. I like the tangibility of the what you're pointing to there. And so we wanted to, David started out framing this as external and internal refuge. Those aren't exactly terms that are used in the suttas, but they've become ways of talking about refuge. I hope what we laid out in the first session was that there's some nuance and complexity to this notion. And I appreciate so much that Mariah pointed to it as a cultivation, like it's something you have to do and something that changes over time. By definition, that's happens in cultivation, is there's a shift or a change or a deepening or a transformation, something. And so in the case of refuge, we may easily connect with things that are kind of what we call these external refuges. They're there, more visible, more easily articulated, more easily shared with others. And so that can be often an entryway. Not always. Some people start with the inner, but you have things like this, images and books with texts in them and so forth. And then as we engage with those things, there's an understanding that the refuge ignites something or resonates with something in us and becomes rooted in us. So there, it's like a transfer or a planting of a seed in some way, and then that begins to grow, and the refuge becomes all the more stable in a sense, safer, more secure because it has a rooting in our own being. We don't need as much externally, or we have both. Let's say it that way. We have both. I think they both deepen over time. So my job is to talk a little bit about this internal refuge and what it means in for each of the three. I'll be careful to say that this, because it's becoming more internal, it also becomes more individual. And so it's not that what I'm saying is how you should feel or connect with these, but more that I'm offering options, and they're meant to resonate maybe with something for you. So if you feel something a little different, great, that's fine. So in the case of the inner Buddha, if you will, often the phrase used is the potential to awaken. So it's like we start realizing, oh yeah, there was this historical person, but as David mentioned, he was very similar to us. In some ways, he was born into his culture and had a spiritual quest and sat on the meditation. I don't think they had cushions, but like on the floor. And so what was the difference, really? He had 6 sense bases. He had a mind and a body. It was all the same. And so we have the same potential. We too carry that seed, that development, that path. And so we start to connect in with that. It can be very inspiring, to realize. I know one person who frames this as every time they sit down, they realize that they're walking in the footsteps of the Buddha because it's the same practice. So there's that potential to awaken, that feeling. In addition, though, we can start to realize, well, the potential, that's a future-oriented idea. And there are moments where we touch into, at this moment, I'm present, I'm awake, I'm mindful. We know that we know. That too is a refuge. The knowing of this experience is always something that is not entangled in it. And so we can start to identify that as a refuge, actually, and an aspect of the Buddha, the one who was always present, the one who never got distracted and off in tangents. And so that direct awakeness we can start to feel as something tangible. That too is an aspect of Buddha. And as soon as we know that we know, as soon as we have some level of mindfulness practice, that's a germ of that, an early seed of that can grow. And then there's the moving to the Dharma. I'll also say that as a little side note that for the inner refuges, there gets to be less distinction between them. I mean, it's all just refuge. And so some of what I say for Buddha or Dharma, you may say, oh, I always thought that was the other one. That's okay. So for the case of the inner Dharma, these teachings or this method and theory start to have real meaning in the way we live our life and the way our thoughts and emotions and actions flow in the world. And we start to recognize that. So I've written a note to myself that there are times when the teachings come forth kind of spontaneously. You may have had this experience. I know somebody who was washing a cup at their sink, and they dropped it into the sink and it broke. And what came to mind was that story of Ajahn Chah, who held up his cup and said, for me, this cup is already broken, ha ha ha, laughing in his way. And as soon as the cup broke, what came to their mind was, oh, the cup was already broken. So that's a very different response than, oh no, or some expletive, something like that. So, and then the person was surprised, it's like, wow, where did that come from? Well, you listen to the teachings enough, they start coming out when needed. Similarly, I remember a time when I arrived back at my car to find that the driver's side window had been smashed and the stereo was gone from the car. And I had the usual, oh no, so I'm going to have to deal with this in the mind. But Then also, I felt compassion for someone who would think that that was a way to be happy. They thought that would be the right thing to do, a good thing, helpful thing for their life. And it's hard for me to imagine that mindset, but it must be very painful. So that I noted that compassion came forth also. And then also I'll name for the inner Dharma. Well, another thing that we heard, there's so much wisdom in this group. We heard last time this phrase, trusting the process. So can we trust that there's something unfolding here once we embark on the path, once we ignite the practice and it starts to unfold? Sometimes we don't know exactly where it's going, or we don't know what we're going to have to do next, or we're not sure what's being called forth. And there can be a trust in, well, I don't really understand what I'm feeling, or my mind seems to be entering new territory, but I trust the process. I trust the unfolding because the opening has always led to a good place before. And it's always been a letting go that was important, even if part of me wanted to hold on. So trusting the process that's unfolding, we can start to tune in to the fact that there is quite a natural process going on of release. Once something in the heart realizes, oh, it's better when I let go, then there's something in the heart that wants to keep doing that. And so we can trust that unfolding. Maybe the most challenging, though, is to consider is the inner Sangha. The Sangha is the community, the other practitioners, those who represent something in the world. It's often seen as external. And so what could the inner Sangha be? What does that start to feel like as it opens? So one of them, I think, is that very understanding of interconnection, of interdependence. Yeah, there's an external Sangha, but it's registered by this one, and therefore I am part of it. And it's not so separate from me and from the unfolding. Being in a community that has ethical standards, which Diana mentioned as a refuge for her, just realizing, oh, being with people who are mindful and who are caring in some way feels different than what's out there in the world. And then we realize, oh, wait, I have the karma to be part of this. I am part of this. Oh, and so there's a sense of understanding interconnectedness. But if we take this far enough, we have to realize that there's also emptiness. There isn't a clear separation between us and them. And so the inner Sangha goes to the surprising place of realizing that there is refuge in impersonality or not self. Or the one teacher summarized his understanding of not self as we're not alone. This might take some reflection. Is it true that if we really understand not self, we can never be alone? Of course. And that is part of the inner Sangha, is that there's always connection, always a relational aspect to life. And there can be refuge in that. And maybe there are sometimes a hint we can feel of a kind of a connection to something larger than us that we don't quite grasp. And there can be a trust in that there are unseen pathways by which the Dharma works. And those connect us to other people. How did we meet our teacher? How did we know when we found that person that there was something there? Many of us have had an experience of, oh, this is it. This connects. This feels right. This one, not so much. What is that? There's some kind of unseen connections sometimes, and we can learn to trust those also. So we need to move on to our breakout groups, but I'll finish maybe by saying that do we ever move beyond refuge completely? I'm interested that there's a sutta where the Buddha says, it is painful to dwell without reverence and deference. What then can I revere? Even the Buddha wanted that. And what he decides in that sutta is that he can have reverence and deference for the Dharma that he is awakened to, which is the biggest sense of Dharma. It's like nature, it's like how things work. He saw the whole lawfulness of the universe, including physical laws and also including the way the mind functions among that. And he felt that that was so beautiful that it was worth reverence. So I think we don't outgrow that. So thank you. On to David. Oh, and I'll just mention also that I need to leave a little early today. So if I vanish, it was expected.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Lovely. Yeah, so now we'd like to turn it over to you for 10 or 12 minutes of conversation amongst yourselves around inner refuge. And the question would be, how do you understand, how might you understand inner refuge in your own practice? Particularly, we've asked inner refuge in the Dharma, as Kim just said, this seems to be where the Buddha found refuge. What does it mean in your own practice to take refuge, find refuge in the Dharma, in the teachings? So maybe it's a nice idea to go around in a spiral, kind of offering something and then listening to others in groups of about 3 or 4, not needing or feeling a need to say everything you might say, but kind of just adding an idea to the mix as it goes around. And keep in mind the usual caveats about not giving advice and sort of listening with wisely, practicing wise speech, practicing good listening. It's the way we accompany and support one another. And letting different opinions emerge and just be held by the group. And why don't we, for ease, I can provide a way to start the spiral, which is, why don't we start, as in the yellow pages, with A1. So that would have the person who's calling in with the number 1650, that person's first in the yellow pages. Otherwise, in alphabetical order by first name, whoever has the first name starting with letter closest to the top of the alphabet could start the spiral. All right, enjoy one another's support. Till soon.
Recording in progress.
Always like it when people come back with a smile. It's a good sign usually. So welcome back. Yeah, maybe we'll take just a few minutes and debrief a bit. I'm very curious to hear kind of what came up, and I expect there's probably quite a lot of variation, a lot of diversity in where people find what it means to for different people to understand inner refuge in the Dharma in their practices. So yeah, raise a hand, either a physical hand or the Zoom hand, and share what came up in your group, for you, for others. Waiting for a hand to appear. Don't keep it secret. In a wonderful passage that we'll make reference to, I plan to make reference to on Saturday, the Buddha says that he's not tight-fisted in sharing the Dharma. So I encourage everybody. Christy, I do see your hand.
It seems like the small groups are just a really wonderful way to get to know other people's minds and hearts. And sharing was just so personal and intimate and just beautiful. As you said, it's inner Dharma, and so inner refuge. And so people were just so vulnerable to get to share their inner being. And it was just really beautiful to be there. So it's not surprising that people came back with smiles.
Yeah, nice.
So much
Thank you,
vulnerability. Yeah.
Sweet. And I think something you point to just in your response and sharing that beautiful experience is just that sometimes these things seem like sort of actions with effort that we take, like we take refuge, but you sort of reveal how refuge emerges in Sangha in this community of practice, that there's refuge just happening, right? And maybe the smile reveals it, right? Or reflects it. So it doesn't always have to be this kind of intentional, or at least consciously intentional action, as much as sometimes a recognition. Oh, this is safe. This is a place of shared concern with my suffering and that of others, whatever it comes out. But you said it better than I can. Very beautiful. Thank you. Linnea.
I arrived late to my group, but Inner Refuge has developed over the 38 years I've been a Buddhist. And at this point, it's just a trust and a knowing. And the Dharma is there. The Dharma is there. It's totally 100% there. And I just gave the example. To me, inner Dharma and outer Dharma, there's no separation. The inner Dharma is always there and it comes out. And it doesn't come out in practices. It comes out, like I explained. I was at the Walmart yesterday and someone told me exactly where to go to find what I needed. She knew every product in the Walmart. She'd been there for 10, 20 years. And so I said, wow, that's so wonderful. Do they appreciate you? And she said, no. And I just immediately gave her a giant hug. I just held her close. I said, thank you so much. And this is what I'm saying. This, like, the outer practice isn't just doing mantras, or I've done purification retreats and days of prostration without eating. And those are wonderful too. But this is what it's become now. And it may change to something else, but thank you.
Nice. Thank you. I hope I pronounced Linnea correctly. I know a Linnea, so that's why I felt of that. Okay. Thank you. Lovely. And it's interesting. Yes. As you point out, we pull these apart sort of for analysis, right? Or for discussion. And yet it's an artificial distinction, or at least one that, it's useful to be able to toggle back between outer and inner, and also recognize that the way it, as you say, can develop, doesn't always, but can develop in practice, is this sense of integration of, sort of outer teachings and inner knowing of the Dharma. So wonderful, nicely shared. Anybody else feel an urge to be generous and share what happened in their group, or for you, or as a group? And when I said be generous, I didn't mean to make that sound like be generous, but anybody else just feel any? There we go, David. Yeah.
Yeah, as I told our small group, I had a good fortune of spending years working with a very wise Buddhist psychotherapist who helped me to understand that ultimately I have to take refuge in myself. As the Buddha said, don't take my word for it. Try it and see if it works for you. And I always, whenever I feel myself doubting myself or the Dharma or this Sangha, I recall those teachings, and it works. I remind myself that it has worked for me and it continues to work for me. And that is really where I find my refuge.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you draw attention to something else. Linnea sort of began this trend in the conversation, but the distinction between outer and inner refuge is one that we add, in a sense, and usefully so. And maybe so is the distinction between or among. I'm going to show the 3 gems above my head again. In other words, taking refuge in oneself, which we'll get into. That's our theme for Saturday, actually. It can be a sense of when we find in ourselves, in our own experience, for example, in the meditation, where we get pointed to again and again in the texts, when we come into direct experience of suffering and the end of suffering, the possibility of awakening is already there, right? The possibility of awakening comes with the understanding of suffering. And that is in a way, a place where the three gems sort of come together as one. In a way, there may be three facets of a gem. That would be another way to understand or characterize them. So anyway, I appreciate both Lene and David sort of, pointing out that this way of imagining is, a useful way to understand our practice, and yet this idea of we return to our experience, our knowing of experience as the fundamental refuge, I think is really an important aspect of this teaching of this particular class. Thank you for your comments, everyone. Diana.
Thank you. So maybe I'll build on what Linnea, David Whiteside, and David Lorey have been pointing to. But first, by highlighting this whole idea of taking refuge is this to have a place where there's a sense of some safety or some protection. And in particularly, also where there's a diminishing or a reduction in suffering, or maybe even a complete elimination of suffering. And maybe I'll ask you, not maybe, I will ask you now, just to reflect just for a moment. Has there been an experience in your life where there has been a sense of peace and ease and some well-being? And just a sense of contentment, like, yeah, things are okay. Things are okay. There is been this a subduing of some wanting to make things different or to do it or have a different experience. Let's just spend just a few seconds here to bring to mind the experience of it's okay. Yeah, things are fine. Maybe they're not the, knock your socks off fireworks. It's just fine here. And I'm going to refer to this a little bit later as I'm talking this morning, but right now I want to highlight that the Buddha, he talked about this. He talked about this idea of finding refuge. And here's an excerpt from the suttas that I found very powerful. And I've adapted it and abbreviated it for our purpose today. But I'm imagining people chanting this together. This would have been the way in which the suttas were preserved, thousands of years ago, is with chanting. And I've abbreviated it, as I said, but this is something that has a lot of repetition and gets repeated 37 times. So you can imagine that there's this natural rhythm and a cadence to this little sutta passage that I'm going to share. And there's maybe even in the same way that we go for refuge, we'll do that a little bit later today, but that Buddham Saranam Gacchami, we just change one word. And it's the same, like this chanting, this rhythm with just a single word changed. There's a way, and just maybe like surrendering to the rhythm as a way that it can have a big impact on us. So as I say this little excerpt, see if you can, just give into the cadence and the repetition, and maybe notice the single word that's getting changed here. So here's the Buddha. I will teach you the peaceful and the path leading to the peaceful. I will teach you the sublime and the path leading to the sublime. I will teach you the unafflicted and the path leading to the unafflicted. I will teach you freedom and the path leading to freedom. I will teach you shelter and the path leading to shelter. I will teach you protection and the path leading to protection. I will teach you sanctuary and the path leading to sanctuary. I will teach you refuge and the path leading to refuge. I will teach you nibbana and the path leading to nibbana. And what is refuge? The ending of greed, the ending of hatred, and the ending of delusion. This is refuge. And what is the path leading to refuge? Mindfulness directed to the body. And what is nibbana? The ending of greed, the ending of hatred, and the ending of delusion. This is Nibbana. And what is the path leading to Nibbana? Mindfulness directed to the body. So that's a excerpt. This to flesh it out, this idea of like what it is, shelter, protection, sanctuary, refuge, Nibbana, etc. The ending of greed, hatred, and delusion. And what is the path? Is mindfulness directed to the body. So there's this powerful way in which refuge and Nibbana get put together, and they are characterized by absences. The absence of greed, the absence of hatred, the absence of delusion. And it's this absence that creates the safety. It's this absence that creates a sense of peace and makes of being sublime and not having any affliction. It's this absence that is the liberation and freedom. And it doesn't say that in there specifically, but we would also say this absence of greed, hatred, and delusion is also the absence of suffering. This is the peace and the well-being. But sometimes when we hear this idea of absence, the no longer something being there, we might have this idea that it feels bland or empty, or this something that, an absence just doesn't sound so compelling to us. But instead, what's being pointed to is some wholeness, the complete wholeness, where nothing is missing. Whereas the greed, hatred, and delusion are a way that are taking away from this sense of peace or sense of freedom that we might have. So we might say it's a profound freedom from the tyranny of, we might say, the desires and aversions, which greed, hatred, and delusion are showing up as wanting to have things or wanting to have other things going away. So what's one way that we can translate this teachings into something practical, something that's relevant for us today? Well, relevant for them at that time too. But we could say, well, the absence of greed, for example, we could say is an absence of craving. And all of us, I think, can recognize that there's a way that craving creates this tension, creates a certain amount of agitation, a certain amount of affliction, partly because it fosters a sense of separateness between me and what I want. Like there's this, kind of like emphasizes the separateness of ourselves, a disconnection, you might say. And it also emphasizes this sense of lack. When we have a sense of craving, a sense of lack, even though it might be subtle, it's having a big impact on us. Even though it's underneath, it's what's causing all this agitation, like a sense of inadequacy, insufficiency. There's got to be more. I need more. I have to acquire more. I have to be more. Like this general sense of more. And then we become fixated on trying to fix this, this sense of lack. And there's this, we become really focused on, okay, I got to acquire. I got to get this thing that I desire in order to make this uncomfortableness of this sense of lack going away. Or maybe we become fixated on eliminating what we dislike, this subtle agitation or this feeling of being out of balance, for example. So this concept that refuge, one way that we could understand it, and Nibbana, one way we could understand it. These are rich concepts, but one ways we can look at it is that they're an absence, the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion, the absence of clinging, the absence of suffering. In some ways, this is difficult because we are often wanting to feel better. We want a particular outcome. So we want something more, or we want some tangible experience that we can hold on to and point to and actually experience. So what this is pointing to is that actually non-clinging is a way, is maybe a more reliable refuge than external things. The absence of clinging non-clinging is a more reliable refuge than external things. And in a way, this non-clinging is an expression of freedom, nibbana. Because as we all know, like external conditions are inherently impermanent. They're always changing. They are not a source of lasting happiness. And the true refuge is actually found with the freedom from attachment, this freedom from clinging that allows us to navigate whatever life is giving us with some certain amount of equanimity and peace. So this absence of clinging, and we might look that the Buddha is pointing to 4 clingings. There's all kinds of things we can cling to, right? But we might be able to categorize them into these 4 ways. These 4 clingings, these misbegotten ideas of what will be a reliable source of happiness. One is clinging to sense pleasures, just looking, kind of conflating happiness and pleasure. It's so easy to do, right? Society really promotes this. Go find this other, go have this other pleasurable experience, and it's going to make you happy, but it doesn't make you happy, right? If it did, then we would just eat chocolate ice cream and wouldn't bother with this whole Dharma thing, right? So 1, clinging to sense pleasures. 2, clinging to views, clinging to opinions, clinging to beliefs, clinging to this notion, I know what's right and you don't. Us got it, we understand it. Them, they don't have it, they don't understand it. Just this clinging to this idea that me or us, that we have whatever our beliefs are, whatever our views are, we're the ones that know the truth and everybody else is wrong. This is such a source of suffering. I'm talking about it in the big picture, but there's always so much of a subtle way in which we feel like, oh no, I have to correct somebody, or oh no, I need to let them know this thing that they clearly don't know, or something like this. There's this way in which we hold on to our views and opinions and our beliefs, believing that we're the only one that has them correct. Not recognizing that these, views and beliefs, they are conditioned, right? We just have them because of the conditions in which our life is unfolding. It doesn't mean they're the absolute truth. So that's the second clinging that the Buddha pointed to. The third is clinging to rites and rituals, is a common way that it gets translated. And I might offer some modern day rites and rituals, which we wouldn't necessarily think about this, but there's a way in which we think like our lifestyle. I'm the one that I'm going to make this up, that does all the recycling, and I'm exercise this way on Tuesdays, and eat this way and don't eat that way, or something. There's a way in which we are, I'm not saying these things are bad, of course I'm not, but there's a way in which we are holding on to them and saying, because I'm really doing this, it's emphasizing a sense of me. And then there's all the other people out there who aren't doing that. It's a way in which our self gets identified. I'm just making up some of these things that we might do and not recognize them as rites and rituals. And maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but just to ask, have some gentle inquiry for yourself. Are there some things that you're clinging on to, thinking that they're going to be sources of lasting happiness? And then the last one is the clinging to philosophies of self. What does it mean to be a self? How are we identified? What are the ways in we think, oh yeah, I'm a person who, and then fill in the blank. And often it's so subtle the way that we're identifying ourselves. I'm the one who studies Buddhist suttas, or I'm the one who meditates in this way, or I'm the one who doesn't do this or that. You'll notice that all these things that I'm pointing to, they're not bad. But it's the way that often it's the clinging to them. It's our relationship to them, which is stealing some of the peace and freedom and ease, as well as maybe supporting some of it too. So there's a way in which there has to be this maturity of practice, this recognition of the subtlety of the art of practice, I might say. So then I'd like to end with this idea. Can we notice and appreciate moments of non-clinging that are just arising in our life. These little micro moments of freedom, we are often overlooking them. They're subtle, they're fleeting, but they're important and they're real. And it's a way in which, by paying attention to them, recognizing them, and valuing them, we reinforce this idea of non-clinging as actually a refuge. This is a really reliable refuge. Also helps to strengthen our commitment to this path of practice. So these little glimpses of freedom and peace, these moments of non-clinging, are a way which can support this, I might say, nibbana as refuge, or refuge in nibbana, or we might make it more tangible, non-clinging as this way forward. So you can trust in this process of letting go of clinging. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ying.
Hey, am I unmuted? Okay, so I'm still here with you, and hopefully you can hear me okay. And so with Diana's words, we're going to settle into a meditation together. And so if you haven't done it already, maybe just settle into a meditative posture. And there's no big rush to get there, but just allowing yourself to gather in the space you're in. The Dharma is already present. Arriving here and now. Arriving through the body. Diana's taught the mindfulness of the body is a refuge. Coming home to the body. That's resting in the sense of the overall body sitting or lying down. However it is, without demanding the body to be in any other way. There's a sense of not clinging, pushing, fixing. Just resting here, however the body may be felt. And open to include the mind and heart. If the mind is chatty or bubbly, simply knowing. Receiving the felt sense. The movements of the breath may come forth. When we loosen up the demand, the wanting, the grasping for any specific states of being. Just this is enough. We're not in a rush. We're learning to stay with what's here. Just as it is. Maybe there is a sense of ease or contentment. That can hold dis-ease or discontentment. Wakeful, alive. Not wishing things to be otherwise. And we'll sit in silence for a little while. In the Chinese sutra, there is a line that points to awakening beckons us within everything. Are you available? Coming in harmony with everything. Coming into the wholeness of everything. A heart that does not cling is safe for everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your practice. And I'll pass on to my colleague.
Thank you, Ying, for the lovely guidance and for doing it outside on your phone since you're locked out of your house. We love these challenges, the four of us. Yeah, so we'd like to open it up before coming to the end of this hour or this hour and a half class to questions. I'm particularly curious myself, just sort of what comes up when we take refuge in the meditation, having just prior to that sort of brought together the idea of outer and inner refuges and the idea of three distinct refuges, you know, kind of all of which are we are encouraged to think are available in the meditation itself and what we come into contact with there. Anyway, curious what questions there might be, reflections, what comes up in the meditation. What comes up in the meditation is so important. Again, raise a hand using the Zoom hand or wave your hand about as you feel moved, and we'll respond accordingly. Also, general questions. There was, by the way, Diana, just FYI, in the chat, a question about the sutta that you made reference to. So any and all questions are welcome.
I think I chatted with somebody about the Samyutta 43, 12 to 43.
Great.
Anybody's interested.
Yeah. Any questions? What comes up for people? Anything we can help shed light on or further confuse? Happy to help. And Ying, I see you're unmuted too. So Ying is also available there. The questions can be taken by any of the three of us. Jerry.
So this is, I could say it's a question of clarification, but it's sort of a question commentary. Is that all right?
Well, sure. Let's see. Well, we can't know in advance.
So when Diana was giving the conditions or the experiences that may be highly correlated with refuge, I think the commonality is the lack of me, mine, I in all of those, right? I mean, to give up, this is theoretical. I wish it was actually felt and lived every moment of my life, but to give up the defilements or to give up the desires, there's a freedom there. And so that freedom, okay, so then this is sort of seems picayune, but I don't, and maybe it is, then you could just interrupt me. But in that really very enjoyable and very I think fruitful meditation, I got hung up. In fact, I even stopped and looked it up. That I think there's a difference for me in mindfulness of the body and mindfulness in the body. And that my understanding, because I did the 3-week retreat with Gil in September, which he focused on probably the same sutta, and one of the titles is mindfulness immersed in the body.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the point now. So that knowing is no longer of something; it's within something, and there's less. For me, it triggers less me, mine, I type of things because it's felt. Right. You know, I'm not labeling that my foot is itchy. I'm mindful because of the direct experience of it, and there's less. There's a freedom and a sense of well-being, which gets close to refuge about that. So I don't know if that's helpful.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, super useful, and you put your finger on it and explicated very well. Yeah, and I don't have a whole lot to add. I only was going to interrupt so that I could remember the rich things you said. But yeah, I think that phrase and Gil's use of it during the 3-week retreat and our use of it that comes up in the instructions for establishing mindfulness to experience body as body, to experience mind as mind, etc. That's among other things, that's exactly what it's getting to. That as we rest in the direct experience of things, agency becomes less necessary, and we can understand that, oh, agency, self, but a sense of wanting, which has an agent, or aversion, that dissipates, that weakens, it becomes flimsy, and we see that it's added to experience, that it's not actually part of the experience in the case you give of the body taken as just bodily sensation and experience.
So, and for me, then what happens is the heart, there's more feeling, there's more heartfulness, there's more beauty in every moment, no matter what the moment is. And
Yep.
that I think from our 2 days of discussion, we have one more day. That's largely where Refuge is in beauty.
Nice. Well, and I think another aspect of what you said is when we get ourselves out of the way, there's room for other people and other beings. And that's also part of what points to Kim, and her talking earlier mentioned how when the car window was smashed, there's it's not really about her and her car, at least for somebody who has her level of practice. She quickly recognizes that there's room in her heart for whoever's situation in life makes it desirable to steal something and sell it and whatever, we don't know. But so yeah, good points. Vas, I see your hand up. And then we'll turn over after this, we'll go to Diana.
Yeah, just kind of continuing the point that Jerry was talking about slightly differently. Diana used a different method of wording it that felt good to me. It was mindfulness directed at the body. And in the meditation that was guided by Ying, oh, very good, Ying, you're inside the house now, good. In the silent moments when my mind wandered and it was always trying to do something or plan something or whatever, and I came back to the body, mindfulness directed back at the body, I always found my body had clenched. And this whole idea that dukkha manifests itself in the body, kind of, that's what came up in my mind, that you can look into the body and feel the suffering in there. Is this in some manifestation?
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, but I want to pass to Diana. But exactly. And that phrase, mindfulness immersed in the body, directed at the body, body as body, all gets it kind of unpacking the same phrase in Pali. And but yeah, what you say is true, that somehow mental states leave a trace in the body, and that's a place we can pick them up sometimes much more quickly than in the mind. Ying, I'm glad you found inner refuge in your house. Diana, it's close time, and sorry, there's only a minute or two left.
Yeah, thank you. I can't help myself. I'm going to put in just a few seconds here. The Pali is kaya gatasati, and this is one word. There's no prepositions. So is it mindfulness in the body, directed to the body, on the body, under the body, with the body? Like, I love that there's no prepositions here, because the prepositions that we use change with practice. The relationship between mindfulness, sati, and the body changes and allows all of us to find our own way with it. So the Pali really supports this conversation that we're having. So now I'd like to change. We only have a short bit here, but I hope that you won't mind if we go over just a minute or two, because I'd like to offer the traditional chant of taking refuge. We're not officially doing it now, but just to introduce, okay, how is this done, this taking refuge? So if this all works well, I'm going to show you the words that are doing it, and we'll hear Ajahn Pasano, who's up in Abhayagiri Monastery, not too far from us, where he is doing this call and response. And this is very often how it is done, call and response with a Dharma teacher and practitioners. So here we go. I'm giving homage to the Buddha and taking refuge.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
There we are. So you have a sense of what when people are taking refuge, the experience, and I don't know. I was quite touched by that. It's lovely to hear this.
Beautiful.
So thank you for your practice. Thank you for attending here, and we look forward to continuing to explore this on a Saturday morning. So, and wishing everybody a happy Halloween. Trick or treat.
Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. If you'd like to unmute and say goodbye.
Yeah, be
Thank you
well.
so
And
much.
yeah.
Thank you. See you on
Bye,
Saturday.
everybody.